Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the main dining room here on board Cunard's Queen Mary 2. Now in one of my recent videos, I gave you a full dining guide based on my experience on Queen Elizabeth for Cunard. However, being on this ship for the last 7 nights for the Transatlantic crossing has definitely shown me that Queen Mary 2 is very, very different to Queen Elizabeth. So in this video, let me give you a full dining guide covering every single meal and every single venue on this incredible ship, starting with breakfast. Okay, here we are. Welcome to my cabin. This week, I have spent the last 7 nights in this inside cabin up on deck number 5 of Queen Mary 2. If you'd like to see more from this cabin or from the other cabins that I usually stay in on ships, then just head over to my channel and you will find so much content over there to show you all of my cabins. But look, that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about dining. So just final thing from me before we jump into breakfast is just to say that if you do find this video useful and if you enjoy it, it would be amazing if down below you could give it a thumbs up. And also think about subscribing to the channel because it really helps to push my content to so many more people. But look, today we're going to talk about a number of different meals. We're going to start by looking at breakfast. We'll then move on to lunch, followed by dinner, followed by late night snacks, followed by afternoon tea, followed by room service. So we've got 6 different types of meals to talk about in this video. So go grab a cup of tea, settle down, and let's get started with breakfast. There's a number of different places that you can choose to eat breakfast on board Queen Mary 2. The first is what I would probably club in one big umbrella as main dining room venues. Now, on Cunard, they operate quite a distinct class system, so depending on what type of cabin or stateroom, as we call it on here, you're sailing in, you will dine in a different place for breakfast. For example, I, in this inside cabin, would dine in the Britannia restaurant, which is the restaurant allocated to everybody in a standard cabin as a main dining room. If I was staying in a Princess Grill suite, then I would be dining at Princess Grill in the morning. If I was dining at Queen's Grill, then I would be staying in a Queen's Grill suite. And if I had booked Britannia Club at the point of my booking, then I would eat in a slightly different part of the Britannia restaurant. Sounds confusing, doesn't it? Now, it's not too difficult because no matter where your cabin is on the ship and what grade of room you're in, the dining times all remain the same. So whatever room you're in, breakfast will open every single day at 8 o'clock in the morning and it'll finish at 9:30 a.m. That applies to Britannia Club, the Britannia Restaurant, Princess Grill, and Queen's Grill. So no matter which one of them you're in, the same dining times will always apply. So hopefully that makes it a little bit more straightforward. We just have to remember which restaurant to go to. You just go there and you'll get fed at that time. Now, there are a couple of other options for breakfast. You could also head up to King's Court, which is the on-board buffet on Queen Mary 2. Now, the times for King's Court are slightly different, and they do split for a continental breakfast and also a full breakfast. So if you were to look for continental, that actually opens very, very early, and you can get in there for breakfast as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. So between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, it's only continental, and later, the full breakfast offering opens. So if you're looking for a cooked breakfast, you'll find that available from 7 a.m. all the way to 10:30. So to be honest, I find King's Court much easier on a Cunard cruise just because I'm rarely up, dressed, ready to leave my cabin and go and sit and have breakfast prior to the main dining rooms closing at about 9:30 every single morning. Now, the next option you've got for breakfast on board Queen Mary 2 is the Corinthia Lounge. If you've seen my dining guide from Queen Elizabeth, you'll remember the coffee shop that I showed you, which is just off the atrium. Now, that would be a very, very light breakfast offering, and that's exactly what the Corinthia Lounge offers on here. It's a beautiful space. It's right beside King's Court Buffet, so very easy to navigate to. And in there, you can expect very light snacks. So in there, think more like coffee and a pastry, that sort of thing. Handy that it's right beside the buffet, so if you want something really light, but the people in your party want a little bit more, then they can just go through the archway into the buffet, get their food and bring it back into the lounge. Now, the final option for breakfast in the morning is room service. Now, during my cruise, I've ordered room service 2 times, and both times I've found it to come very, very early. When you put the order in, you have to pick a delivery time. Now, what I found is when I was booking my delivery time for about 8 a.m, my breakfast was arriving at about 7:20 in the morning, which, yeah, in my opinion, definitely isn't ideal, because if I book it between 8 and 8:30, that's when I expect it to arrive, because I, to be perfectly honest, will wake up for it arriving. I won't be awake 40 minutes early at that time in the morning. So I'm not too sure what's happened with room service breakfast on this cruise, but it's been a little bit of a funny one. Anyway, let's talk about the menu. So the menu that you can get on this ship, which I'll put a picture of it on now for you, you can choose from cold breakfast, so continental offerings. You've then also got the option to have a hot breakfast, and you've also got some more premium add-on options. So for example, you could get a mimosa in the morning, and you can just fill that in on your room service card. So really straightforward to do. The only thing that they ask is that you hang the menu on your stateroom door no later than 1 o'clock in the morning, which, to be honest, I think is pretty fair of them, because a lot of other cruise lines would ask for that menu to be out there way before midnight in order to help them prepare. So 1 a.m, thumbs up. Next up, lunch. Lunchtime on a Cunard ship gets pretty busy with the amount of offerings that are available to you. Breakfast that we've covered there, if you thought that was complicated, then strap yourself in, because there's about to be a lot more offerings put on the table. The reason for that is that there's just a lot more venues that you could choose from. So the ones that we can mention really, really quickly is, well, number one, the main dining room offering, whether that's the Britannia, the Queen's Grill, wherever you would be choosing to dine. On a day at sea, you can go for lunch in all of those venues between 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. So regardless of your cabin category, you can dine within those times. Now, thinking about venues we've also looked at earlier, think about King's Court, so the buffet on board QM2. It's open between 11:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m, so again, slightly longer than the main dining room. And then there's a slightly different part of King's Court called the Chef's Galley, and in there, at the same time, you can get burgers and you can get hot dogs. I would imagine on a warm weather cruise, the cafe on the top deck would be open, but on this December Transatlantic, we haven't had I think they call it the Boardwalk Cafe or the Promenade Cafe. I think it's the Boardwalk. It's been totally closed on this sailing, so maybe if you're in a warmer climate, the Chef's Galley would actually be upstairs instead for burgers and hot dogs, because it's usually a poolside snack, and that's certainly what I saw on Queen Elizabeth. Now, the next venue to think about for lunch, we're going back into the Corinthia Lounge. Now, that place is open between 12 and 2:30, so very similar to the buffet, but again, light lunch. It's not big lunches. Think more tapas size in there. And if you want bigger portions, then I can absolutely recommend that you need to head down to the Golden Lion pub. This is one of my favourite venues for lunch on any Cunard ship, and I was delighted to find out that it's on QM2. In terms of opening hours, you can go in there anytime from 11:30 a.m, and lunch finishes at 2:30 p.m. In terms of what I'd recommend you order to try and eat, the chicken tikka masala is without a doubt the best thing that I've eaten on a Cunard cruise. It's so good that I've gone back 3 times this week, and every single time it is consistently good. So if you do one thing on your Queen Mary 2 cruise, and that is go and get a chicken tikka masala, then I'll be happy. So let me know in the comments, have you had a curry at the Golden Lion pub, or would you go down and have that on a hot weather cruise? I'd be very intrigued to know your answer to that. If curries aren't your thing, you can also get steak pies, you can get salads. There's loads and loads. Basically, think British pub food, and that's exactly what you'll get at the Golden Lion. Now, the final place that we need to talk about when we're thinking about lunch is the steakhouse at the Veranda. Now, this is a specialty restaurant offered on the Queen Mary 2, which means that it comes with an additional charge. So all of the other offerings that we've spoken about so far come totally included in your cruise fare, so you don't pay anything extra for them. However, if you dine at the Veranda, then you will pay a cover charge. At the point of recording this video, which is mid-December 2023, the cover charge for lunch was $30 US. Personally, I didn't dine there at lunch. I did try the dinner service, and I thought it was fantastic. Dinner's slightly more expensive, but we'll come back to that in a second. But typically what I see with specialty restaurants on ships is that the lunch is usually just a better value version of dinner, because they're trying to get people to go in at lunchtime instead of just filling the dinner service. So, you know, it might be worth giving it a shot. It's open from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So hopefully there'll be plenty of time that you can squeeze it in the middle of a day at sea. And that takes us on to the main event of the day. Some would maybe argue it's not, but I definitely think it is, and that is dinner. Now, dinner on board QM2 is where things get pretty special, and it's where the ship really comes to life. Now, what we'll do here is we'll break down each venue, we'll break down the opening times, and where I've got examples of food I've eaten in that venue, I'll try and flash it on the screen for you so that you can see the type of food and the quality of food that I've experienced this week. Now, first up, let's talk about that main dining room overall umbrella that we spoke about earlier. First of all, starting with Queen's Grill and Princess Grill, they are really, really straightforward, where they open at 6:30 p.m. and they close at 9 p.m. So every single day, that's your hours for both Queen's Grill and also Princess Grill. Moving downstairs to the Britannia restaurant, which is where everybody in a standard category stateroom would be dining, it works slightly differently. So you can see with the pictures on your screen that that dining room spans across 2 decks, and that's deck number 2 and deck number 3. Now, dinner operates slightly differently to lunch, where lunchtime you can just show up at the restaurant and be seated wherever. But with dinner, some people have slightly different bookings. Now, that means some people will have a set dining slot, which means that they know every day they will eat at 7 p.m, for example. Bad example, because that is not a time you can go for. But they would go for sitting number 1, and then the later diners would go for sitting number 2. They would all dine on deck 2, and everybody with open dining, which means you can go to the restaurant whenever you're hungry during the opening hours, they would dine upstairs on deck 3, looking down onto deck 2. Now, if you are looking at a set dining slot, then the times that you're looking at, the first sitting would be going in at 6 p.m. with the last call by 6:15, and the second sitting would begin in at 8:30 with the last call at 8:45. Now, quite a lot of people ask me, well, what's the benefit to taking a prescribed dining slot when I don't know when I want to eat? And to be honest, the answer I give to that is that I've been on cruises before where open dining can get really, really difficult because the lines get really long if everybody appears at the same time. Have I had that experience on board Queen Mary 2 this week? Absolutely not. I haven't waited in a queue at all for food on here. It's been really, really excellent, but don't take my 1 week as gospel for what it's always like on here. So if queuing at dinner time definitely isn't your thing, you might want to think about going into one of those prescribed dining slots. Now, dinner at the buffet, so up on King's Court on deck number 7, is open from 6 o'clock until 9:30 p.m. So you have a really, really long time for your dinner up there. In addition to the King's Court buffet, you've also then got Chef's Galley, which, if you remember back to lunch, they were serving burgers and hot dogs, but they now serve pizza and pasta. And at night, it turns into a restaurant which, to be honest, it feels like a specialty restaurant in there. I really rate it. And the thing that I love about it is I think people don't realise it's included in their cruise fares. I've never seen an included venue on a cruise ship be so quiet? Even tonight is currently my final night on board, and tonight there was about 8 tables in there, and that was it. There was no line, nobody was waiting, the food was coming out quite quick. So definitely check out Chef's Galley, because if you maybe are a bit like me, where you don't want to load up on buffet food all the time, but you just want a pizza or you just want a pasta dish, then you can go in there. It's got a really clear menu, and I really enjoy the setting because it totally loses the chaos of a buffet-like environment. Now, thinking down to the veranda, which was the steakhouse restaurant down on deck number 8 at the very back of the ship. Earlier, we said that to go in there for lunch, it would cost $30 per person. Now, at the point of recording this video, to go in there for dinner, the cover charge was $50, so $50 per person. I found from a value for money point of view, $50 for a steakhouse dinner is actually pretty decent value. I've been on cruise ships before where instead of a cover charge, they applied an a la carte pricing model to their steakhouse. And before you know it, you've spent $100, $120 each on dinner. So $50, I really don't think it's that bad. And I think there is quite a noticeable difference between main dining room and speciality dining with Cunard, which, to be honest, says a lot, because main dining room quality on here is pretty good, and I've found standards to be really quite high. Now, the final dinner offering to talk about is called King's Court Alternative. Now, if you remember Queen Elizabeth, it was called Lido Alternative, I believe, and that is essentially a part of the buffet restaurant that is sectioned off and turned into a speciality premium restaurant at night. So in other words, there's a part of the buffet where the food's very different and you do pay to dine in there. Now, on this cruise, it was $25 per person to dine there. I didn't this cruise just because I did on Queen Elizabeth, and I didn't really want to do it again because I've tried that menu. But from Queen Elizabeth, I really would recommend you try the alternative offering. For $25, it's really not a lot of money for the quality of food that they were offering up there. A lot of cruise ships, I'm quite sceptical and I'm quite negative about dining venues that are within buffets. But the way they do it on here is they totally close it off, and there's frosted doors, there's ropes, so you don't get people walking past with buffet food the way that you maybe would on some other cruise ships. So big thumbs up from me on an alternative point of view. Now that covers dinner. Would you believe we've now covered breakfast, lunch and dinner on board Queen Mary 2? The next thing that we need to talk about is afternoon tea, which is one of the main things on a Cunard cruise. This is now becoming world famous, where every single day at 3:30 on board this ship, the Queen's Room will be totally transformed into a beautiful afternoon tea hall. All the waiters will come out carrying finger sandwiches, carrying scones, carrying jam and cream and cakes, and you essentially chill out with all of the aforementioned treats and a cup of tea or a coffee. Now, that begins at 3:30, and usually by about 4:30, that's all wrapped up. Now, if you don't want to do afternoon tea in the Queen's Room, which, if you haven't done it before and you're coming on this ship, please promise me you'll give it a try, because it really is an experience in itself. But you can also have afternoon tea up at the buffet. So if you head up to King's Court at the same time as what you could do in the Queen's Room, you'll be able to pick your own scones, pick your own cakes, pick your own sandwiches just off the counter, as if you were at a regular buffet restaurant. So if you don't like the formality of the Queen's Room, where they've got a live musician playing and it's quite fancy, if that could be a word I can use, then the buffet might be the best option for you. You also can order afternoon tea on room service. So I did that this afternoon, where I couldn't be bothered with the Queen's Room, I couldn't be bothered going to the buffet, and I was really comfortable in here. So I basically picked up the phone, called for an afternoon tea, they brought afternoon tea for one, and I just chilled out to be honest, I chilled out in bed and ate my afternoon tea for one, and it was it was an excellent situation. So I would really recommend that. Now, the final dining offering, actually the penultimate dining offering we need to think about today are late night snacks. Now, you'll find these available up at the Lido or up at the King's Court buffet, and that'll be available from 11 p.m. until 12:30 a.m. So if it gets to the end of the night and you want chips, you want a hot dog, you want salad is available, but I'm not sure who's eating that at midnight. But if you want anything as a bit of a final snack before you go to bed, then that's open up there. Quality-wise, I found differs per night, to be honest with you. Some nights you go up and it's really good, and then other nights you go up and it feels like it was leftover school dinners that are being served. So, yeah, I wouldn't really write home about what's offered on the late night snack tray, but I guess it is just a late night snack. It's not a main meal. Now, the final thing that we need to talk about, and I was trying to see if I've got the menu here, but I don't. I'll put a picture on the screen now for you, is room service. Room service on a Cunard cruise is totally included in your cruise fare. You don't pay delivery fees, you don't pay supplementary charges, and the quality, I think, is exactly what you would get if you ordered that food in a restaurant from a menu. So if you are a bit like me, where sometimes you can be a little bit introverted and you just want to chill out in your room, watch a movie and have lunch or dinner, then you absolutely can do that. The bit of advice I would give you from being on this cruise this week is that room service was quite difficult to attain. Every time I would try to phone them, it would take about 30 to 40 minutes to get through to someone, which, in my opinion, well, to be honest, not just in my opinion, that isn't good enough, especially not for a cruise product that's claiming to be premium like Cunard. I would maybe expect service like that on a far more budget-friendly cruise line, but certainly not a cruise line that I've paid significantly more money to come on. And as a solo, I've got to pay for 2 people on here. So yes, 40 minutes to get the phone answered to get room service, definitely not okay. So I'm hoping that whatever's happened there has just been exclusive to this cruise, because I never saw that at all on board Queen Elizabeth. When the food does come in the room service offering on QM2, it was exactly the same as what I'd get on QE. But yeah, in order to get the food, it was a little bit of a mission at times. And that's it. That is a full dining guide of every single meal and every single venue on board Queen Mary 2. If you're still watching, thank you so much for bearing with me, and thank you for giving me time out of your day to listen to me tell you all about dining on board this remarkable cruise ship. If you have enjoyed the video, and if you do think it could be useful for your future cruises, you know what to do. Jump down below, give it a thumbs up. That would be absolutely amazing. But look, wherever you're watching from, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the morning, rest of the afternoon, or a good night, and I'll hopefully see you all back here for my next video. Thank you, everyone. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more about cruising with Cunard, then why not come and check out this video. Here, I'll be telling you all about 20 things that I think you should try to do on your Cunard cruise, and the best part, they're all totally free of charge and included in your cruise fare. I'll see you over there.